jokester in the back of the room. Anyway, Bible 101, we're going through each book of the Bible. We're starting at the beginning. We're now up to Jeremiah. This is week 16 of our study. And what we're doing is we're basically just getting the highlights of what's in each of the books. Okay? So, a lot of what we're doing now, we went through Isaiah, and now we're going through Jeremiah. We're looking at the we're looking at the major prophets right now. And if you remember, the reason why they're called major prophets, it's not because they were more important or they did more things, but just they have larger books. So Jeremiah has 52 chapters. So that's what we're going to look at today. Then Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. All these are larger books of the Bible, of the prophets. So they're considered major prophets. If we look on the timeline, and this is a rough timeline. I kind of disagree with some of the stuff over on this side here, the dates. But you can see Jeremiah is right here. He's right here with Daniel, Ezekiel, Habakkuk, and Nahum. So all of these were during the time of Josiah, and right up to the time that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians. And that's one of the things that we'll get into. If you remember in Kings, Israel, which is northern Israel in the north, and then there was Judah in the south. And Judah was around the temple, so the temple or Jerusalem, that belonged to Judah. And what happened was, here it is, the fall of the northern, and what happened was Assyria, which is over in the Fertile Crescent, if you will, over into modern day Iraq. But Syria was right there between the Tigris and the Euphrates, and they came up around the corner up through northern or southern Turkey, and they came down and they basically sacked Israel and took all the people away, took them into captivity to Syria. And then what happened was they replanted or they supplanted people from other nations that they attacked and put them in northern Israel. So what we have now is when we get to the New Testament, and they talk about the Samaritans and how they're not well liked by the rest of the Jewish people. It's because they were interbred from the people that were left there and people that they planted there, that the Assyrian planted there. Kind of a way to, if I take you and put you in Southern California, then you're going to be dependent to me, and you're not going to rise up and try to overthrow me because you don't know really understand where you are, and you don't understand. So that was their kind of thinking. So that was in 720 when the northern part of the kingdom went to Assyria. And now what we're going to get into today, the history is that
Jeremiah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking over here. I saw Joash. I'm looking over here, but it's Josiah. Josiah led a not a revolution. What do you call it when you restoration, getting the people back to worshiping the Lord and being one God and doing all the things that God had commanded them through the law. And so, and then of course, like so many other times, what happens is the sons kind of go astray. And that was once again, if you want to review, go back and look at Kings when we went through Kings and 2 Kings, and you can see the history there. So, but that's a little bit of refresher history. Here again, we talked about Isaiah the other day. We're going to talk about Jeremiah, Lamentations, Daniel and Nim here in the coming weeks. So, once again, here's the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. This is the north. This is around Jerusalem. And we're down to here. And I just realized that's a typo. That should be Jehoiakim and Jehoiakim. And then the next one is, you see Zedediah?
Yes.
Zedekiah? Okay, so that's the last one. Okay. So, and here's this. This is Assur, that's Assyria. They were all over here, and they come through here and come down and took over northern, the nation of Israel, and then Judah survived, and then the Chaldeans or the Babylonians, they overthrew the Assyrians, and they end up coming and taking Jerusalem. All the time, you have Israel or Egypt also, and they're trying to move up. So basically, Jerusalem, Judah, Israel, they're right in the path of all these warring nations, and it's like hey, let's just go fight in the middle of Israel and destroy their country. And so that's where we're at right now. Jeremiah is a prophet, and he's prophesying about this coming threat from Babylon. And okay, so here's a basic outline of the book of Jeremiah. Call of the prophet in chapter 1 sounds a lot like a lot of the other prophets. He hears a voice and hears the Lord's calling him, and so he goes and becomes a prophet, even though he's really young. Kind of sounds like Samuel when Samuel was being called. So with that, let's jump right into Jeremiah. A couple other things that we need to think about. It's interesting when you read Jeremiah, and I read it last night. As you're reading it, at some points it sounds like, regular prophecy, thus saith the Lord, and you hear this kind of stuff. And then at other times it's kind of like you have another voice there, almost like Jeremiah's arguing with God or talking to God, and God's answering him. Kind of like a reversal of everything, where God, like in the book of Job, when God tells Job, "Where were you when I created?" He's asking Job questions, and in this kind of a little bit different here, because it's almost like they're talking. And so when you read the prophecies, it's almost like you're wondering, now is this a prophecy, or is this that him talking with God? And so there's that, and that's pretty much in the first 35 chapters. You'll see that, and I wanted to show you this. I didn't take a picture of it and put it on the screen, but I wanted to show you that. So when you look at your Bibles and you see something like this, it usually means that is like a song or poetry. So the whole did you see that?
Yeah.
You can push that around. Did you see that? So you see a lot of that in these first 35 chapters. It'll like have regular script all the way across the page, and then all of a sudden it'll go to like center alignment, and it'll be shortened in some places, and that's because it's poetry or it's either a song, and you see a lot of that in Jeremiah. Okay. So the warning and is that word for me?
Exhortation.
Thank you. to Judah. Okay, so all of this, remember, Israel's gone. And so he's telling Judah. And he says, why has the Lord of our God done this to us? You will tell them. This is what God says to Jeremiah. As for you have forsaken me and served foreign gods in your own land. So now you will serve foreigners in a land not of your own. So Jeremiah's basically saying, hey, because you didn't, adhere to the Shema, the great Shema, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. In other words, there's only one God, and this is the God you're supposed to serve. So this is kind of a punishment. This is going to be a punishment. And it's really interesting as you read the prophecies and you listen to them, and you're like, wow. You wonder sometimes if you could take some of those prophecies and put them into today, and how some of our nations are suffering. But Jeremiah, just for 35 chapters, he basically lays it out. And it's interesting because some of the prophecies can come back again and again. It's kind of the same words come back again and again. Kind of like some people that preach, and they preach the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, why do you keep preaching the same thing over and over again? It's like, I'll preach it till you get it. And so that's kind of like what Jeremiah's doing. He's like, I'm preaching this until you get it. So a lot of the things that happen in Jeremiah 5, their deeds have no limits. They do not plead the case of the fatherless to win. They do not defend the rights of the poor. Should I not punish them for this, declares the Lord. In other words, it's not just that you only you're worshiping other gods, but you're not doing the basic things that I really need you to do. And that's something that you'll see as you go and you read through the prophets. All the prophets, they have this central theme: take care of the poor, take care of the stranger in your land. Don't cheat people. Don't, be kind to people. And all this stuff like this that people aren't doing. Basically, he's telling them, don't be jerks and take advantage of people that you can take advantage of. So, a big theme in this, along with the rest of the prophets. So one of the things, this is all the way down in chapter 20. It says, when the priest Pashur, son of Immer, the chief officer of the temple of the Lord, heard Jeremiah prophesying these things, he had Jeremiah the prophet beaten and put in stocks at the upper gate of Benjamin at the Lord's temple. The next day, when Pashur released him from the stocks, Jeremiah says to him, the Lord's name for you is not Pashur, but, let's say it again, Magor Mizabib, which means terror on every side. So this is the lead official of the temple, and his name is changed. So in other words, Jeremiah's already prophesied, hey, this people are coming. If you get an older Bible, it'll say Chaldeans. The newer Bibles will translate it to Babylonians, but they're coming, and they're going to wipe you guys out. So, and throughout the prophecy, you'll see that he's basically saying, God's saying, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. There's nothing, you can't pray, you do anything in my sight that's right, you're done. This is going to happen. You're going to feel my wrath. And there's a couple places in there where it's given hope. And that hope is not in prayer, not in fasting, but in right actions. Doing the things that were commanded. Taking care of the poor, taking care of the widows, taking care of the strangers in your land, being hospitable. These things, which is the reason why Jeremiah says this calamity is coming on them, along with the fact that they've been, serving other gods. And so there's a built-in little bit of hope there, kind of like you'll see when we get there, I guess. Jonah, when Jonah goes and preaches to Nineveh, and then Nineveh repents, and Jonah's, when he gets there, he says, the Lord's going to wipe you out and all this other stuff, and they repent, and the Lord doesn't, and then Jonah gets upset. It's like, I wasted a good prophecy on this, but he should be rejoicing because they repented. However, here in Jeremiah's case, they don't. And we'll get there. We'll get there as we go along. Of course, spoiler alert, that Jerusalem gets overthrown and basically torn completely down. They tear down the temple. They burn all the officials' houses, and even a bunch of the temple, and pull down the walls of the temple. So, any questions so far? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You really need to read through this to get a feel for what is being said, and as you read it, it's really amazing. The things that are being said, you're going, wow, that's kind of like our society today, a godless society, or we're chasing after other gods, money, fame, possessions. All these things can be a god to you when you focus completely on them and not on God. And so that's, as you read through it, I encourage you to, you can see the different things that kind of reflect on us today. In chapter 35, the last chapter, Jehoiakim, remember that's the son of the good king of Judah, so he's kind of gone astray. He actually had, Jeremiah comes and he reads the scroll. He has his Baruch, he translates, that's his scribe. I need one of these, just kind of tell, hey, write this down, and the scribe writes it down for him. But anyway, so they take the scroll and they go into the temple and they read it, and then the people in the temple, they go, oh, the king needs to hear about this. So they get it, and God warns Baruch and Jeremiah, get out of here. And so they flee, and when the king reads it, he's like, no, because it's this doom, gloom and doom prophecy. Babylon is coming, and they're going to destroy you completely, and this kind of thing. And so after he reads it, as they're reading it to the king, he's cutting pieces off and burning it. And he's cutting pieces off and burning it. So as they're reading it, kind of, the scrolls, they're unrolling the scroll and they're reading it. And as it's hanging down, they're lopping it off and throwing it into the fire. And so God tells Jeremiah, go to Baruch, write it all down again, and take it back to him. So it's like, you're not going to get rid of me that easy. God's telling Jehoiakim, you're not going to get rid of me that easy. See, And once again, he does the same prophecy. Now, jumping down here, the suffering and persecution, 36 through 38. It's basically almost a narrative, and it talks about how Jehoiakim tries to persecute him, and then later you're going to get Zedekiah, who is one of the sons of Josiah, and he becomes the king of Judah. And that's kind of interesting, because what happens is Babylon comes down and basically takes over the city, takes a bunch of people away, and then sets up Zedekiah as the king. So he's kind of in favor with Babylon. And at the end, he decides, you know what, I don't really like Babylon. I'm going to side with Egypt. And so he sides with Egypt. Egypt comes up, and the Babylonians pull back. Then they think, oh, yay, we've got a huge nation of Egypt to protect us. And then a little while goes by, and Egypt goes, we're out of here. They go back down. Babylonian was basically regaining their force, and they come back, and that's when they completely destroy the Jerusalem and the temple. And the reason why they did that was because, remember, it was Zedekiah who was placed there by the Babylonians, and instead he got, hey, we're going to go with the Egypt, sorry Babylonians. And then when they come back, they're like, okay, this is how we die. This is how we deal with you. And they tore all the down. They took all the people except the poor people. They left the destitute people there to work the barren land. What did Jesus say? Who will inherit the earth? Poor, the meek shall inherit the earth. That's kind of what he did here. And that's another really interesting thing that you probably don't know. As you're reading this and you're reading some of this prophecy, you can actually see the words of Jesus, because he's quoting the prophets. A lot of the words that Jesus said was quotations from the prophets. And when you read the prophecies, and as you're reading them, and you're like, wait a minute, that's almost just like what Jesus said. And that's the reason why, because he knew the prophets, he knew the law, and he was able to bring your mind to this idea. Now, Jesus says that the meek shall inherit the earth. And he also says that, remember when we talk about the prophecy about how the temple will be pulled down and all that stuff? Wow, if you listen to it, it's almost like he's just quoting straight out of Jeremiah. When the temple and the Jerusalem fell to the Babylonians. A lot of the things that Jesus said is a lot of the prophecies that come, like, it sounds just like what Jeremiah said. So that's the persecution of the prophet. One of the interesting things, and this is a theme, I brought a couple of my books. This is Von Rad, and this is Collins, and these are about the Hebrew Bible, and they look at it through a critic. How do I say it? Literary critique. In other words, they look at it and they look at differences in the way it's said and everything, and they point to this idea that there was this battle going on between the kings and the priests and the prophets. They were all kind of at odds with each other, trying to have this power. And the prophets were like for the people, and they're telling the leadership, they're prophesying to the leadership, you need to do this, you need to take care of the poor, you need to take care of the people, take care of the strangers in your land, only have one God. And so they're kind of like championing the poor people. social activists. Okay, and you see the kings, and they had, of course, the cultists, which is the priests and everything. You have to come to Jerusalem. You have to worship at the temple. Now, could you imagine today saying that you have to go to the Silver Dome, or the is it Silver Dome? Yeah, it's the Silver Dome in Louisiana to worship. Oh, that's fine if you live in Louisiana or around New Orleans. But what if you live in Washington State? You got to come all that way just to worship and everything. So there was this kind of this battle between those groups to do what the prophets want, to do what was right for the people, and the priests kind of, in a way, followed the kings and what they wanted. And they even had some prophets that they were false prophets. They were prophesying while Jeremiah's prophesying gloom and doom. They're saying, no, peace, peace. It's going to be peace. We're going to be saved. Everybody's going to be returned to their homes. It's going to be wonderful. And Jeremiah's like, no, you're a false prophet, and you need to go away. But and that's one of the reasons why, if I'm a king and I've got this guy over here telling me everything's going to go away. Okay, here we go. Can I get controversial here? So I'm a governor, and I don't want anything but what I want. And I have somebody saying, you can't do that. And so I use all that I have to do what I can do against this theme park. And there's people out there saying, wake up, you're heading us down the wrong path. So you kind of see that? That's kind of what's going on back then too. You got these kings that are in it for their own self and their own glory, and then you got the prophets saying, no. And then, so you get your own prophets, and you say, oh, see, it's going just like I wanted it to go. And so they got that. Okay, so what happens in 39 through 45? Jerusalem falls. A lot of the stuff, all the prophecies come back almost word for word, and Jerusalem falls. Everybody's taken down. Whole place is torn down. They tore down the walls. They pulled them down and everything. And then in 46 through 51, that's the nations. Now Jeremiah is going to prophesy against the nations, because during his prophecies he said that Babylon and all these other places that are going to come and do this are his tools. In other words, God set up these great nations to come and to overthrow the nation of Israel and Judah, because they weren't doing what he had them do, what he told them to do. And then at the end, you see these great prophecies, gloom and doom, against all the different nations. In 46, prophesies against Egypt. In 47, against the Philistines. 48, against Moab. 49, against the Amorites, Edomites, Damascus, Kedar, Hazor, and Elam. And the big one is in 51 and 50. He prophesied against Babylon. And of course, we know that the king of Mede comes and overthrows Babylon, and that's when King Cyrus lets the Israelites go back, or the Judites go back to where they would come from in Judah. And that's in Esther. And then finally, chapter 52, it's basically a summary of... I found this on the web. She just found me all of the nations, so I just... Anyway, so in 52, it's a summary. This is what happened. You know, if you want to know something, go to the end of the book, read the last chapter, so you know what happens through the whole book. That's basically it. I mean, there's no prophecies there, just basically what happens. And one of the things that happened, like Jeremiah prophesied to Zedekiah that he will never see the land again. He will be taken away and Jerusalem destroyed. And what happens? They take him out and they blind him, and then they take him in chains to Babylon, where he ends up dying. So, any questions about Jeremiah? It's a wonderful prophecy, or a wonderful book of prophecy. Highly encourage you to read it. Like I said, when you read it and you start reading some of the prophecies, it's like, wow, those are the prophecies, almost word for word, the prophecies that Jesus used. And of course, Jesus was 33, the year 33, and in year 70, not even 40 years later, Jerusalem falls. When the Greeks or the Romans come in and sack the city in 70 AD and tear down the temple for the last time. So, all right, that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you.